At 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, a single flash of light, brighter than 1,000 suns, silenced a city. Within seconds, Hiroshima ceased to exist. But while history books focus on the explosion, the most terrifying part isn't the blast itself, it's the 48 hours that followed. A window of time where the Japanese government had no idea what happened, where American pilots were treated like movie stars while their bodies were unknowingly being bathed in radiation, and where a black rain began to fall that would kill those who survived the fire. Today, 80 years later, declassified reports reveal a story of confusion, cover-ups, and a terrifying scientific realization. This is the 48 hours the world wasn't supposed to know about. In Tokyo, 400 miles away, the Japanese High Command was in a state of baffling confusion. At 8:16 a.m., the Japanese Broadcasting Corporation noticed something impossible. The Hiroshima station had simply gone off the air. There was no report of a massive air raid, no frantic distress signal, just absolute, dead silence. The military tried to call the Hiroshima telegraph office. Nothing. They tried the railway signaling station. Nothing. The invulnerable communication lines of the empire had been severed by something they couldn't name. Desperate for answers, the Japanese General Staff sent a young pilot into the air. His mission was simple: fly toward Hiroshima, find out why the phones were down, and return. He never expected what he saw. 100 miles away from the city, he saw a cloud so massive it seemed to swallow the horizon. When he finally reached the coordinates where Hiroshima should have been, he looked down at a scar on the earth. A city of 350,000 people had been replaced by a burning, flat wasteland. He circled the ruins in total shock, radioing back a single, haunting message: Hiroshima has been annihilated. While Tokyo was paralyzed by silence, the Pacific island of Tinian was deafening. The Enola Gay had landed. The crew was greeted not as soldiers, but as celebrities. There were floodlights, cold beer, and a ceremony where Colonel Paul Tibbets was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross on the spot. But beneath the celebration, a dark reality was brewing. The scientists on the ground began to realize the little boy bomb had been incredibly dirty. While the pilots toasted to the end of the war, the ground crews were already beginning to worry about the invisible dust coating the plane, a silent killer that wouldn't show its face for another 24 hours. As night fell over the ruins of Hiroshima, the survivors faced a new terror. The sky, choked with pulverized stone and radioactive soot, turned a bruised purple. Then the rain began, but this wasn't water, it was the black rain. It was thick, oily, and stained everything it touched. To the thousands of survivors suffering from catastrophic burns, this rain felt like a blessing from heaven. Thirsty and desperate, they opened their mouths to drink. They didn't know they were swallowing concentrated fallout, the literal remains of the bomb's core. Within hours, those who drank the rain began to suffer from a thirst that no amount of clean water could quench. It was the first sign that the bomb hadn't just killed with heat, it had poisoned the very elements of life. By the 18-hour mark, the city's few surviving doctors were witnessing a medical mystery that defied every textbook in existence. People who had no visible injuries, people who had been blocks away from the blast and appeared perfectly healthy, suddenly collapsed. Their hair fell out in clumps, their skin developed strange purple spots, they began to vomit black bubbles. In 1945, the term radiation sickness wasn't in the public's vocabulary. Doctors thought they were dealing with a new strain of dysentery or a chemical weapon. They were treating patients with vitamins and salt water, unaware that their patient's bone marrow was effectively disintegrating. The invisible killer had arrived, and it was far more patient than the firestorm. While the victims in Hiroshima were entering their second day of agony, 6,000 miles away in Washington, D.C., a different kind of tension was rising. The White House had expected an immediate surrender. They waited for a signal from the emperor. 12 hours passed. 24 hours. 36 hours. The silence from Japan was interpreted not as a communication breakdown, but as defiance. Inside the Pentagon, the Target Committee was already looking at the clock. The original plan allowed for a gap between bombs to let Japan process the destruction. But as the 48-hour mark approached, the hawks in the US military argued that Japan was digging in. They didn't know that the Japanese government was still struggling to even confirm if the city was actually gone.
In this 48-hour window of confusion, the fate of a second city, Nagasaki, was sealed. The Fat Man plutonium bomb was wheeled out of its assembly hut on Tinian Island. The gears of the second tragedy were already turning, fueled by a total collapse of information between two warring worlds. 48 hours. In that short window, the world transitioned from the age of gunpowder to the age of extinction. We often think of history as a series of planned events, but the 48 hours after Hiroshima show us the truth. It was a time of black rain, invisible poisons, and a silence so profound it led to the destruction of a second city. 80 years later, the shadows on the stones of Hiroshima remain, a permanent reminder of what happens when the world moves faster than our ability to understand what we've created.